Hey folks, Randy Newberg here, trying to bring you another episode of Hunt Talk Radio. This really sticky August evening is just me and my dog here in Bozeman, Montana. And I'm trying to get caught up on podcasts. I was traveling last week, and I thought I had some good guests lined up, and then in all the board meetings I was at, we just got too busy, and the podcast never came out of the kit. So sorry about that. No real good excuse other than that's just life at times. But today, I'm going through a series of questions. I'm out on our Hunt Talk forum. If you go to hunttalk.com, we have a segment of the forum that's called Podcast Topics. And I just scroll through those because people leave some really, really good questions. And they help me out a lot as I'm trying to form what topics people want to hear, trying to talk about relevant topics, but yet topics that maybe push the envelope a little bit. So I'm going to go through a bunch of that. I'm going to go through some other things. I've got a bunch of emails lately, people asking, how do I get ready for a hunting season? I just looked at what we call the whiteboard. And right now, between myself and guest hunters, we've got 6 elk tags, 1 antelope tag, 10 deer tags, an Alaska bear tag. And we're going to be doing some grouse hunting, duck hunting, trapping, predator calling, wolf hunting, all kinds of stuff. So between now and sometime in mid-January, late January, all those hunts will be behind us. And people ask me, how do you get ready for that kind of hunt? Or that kind of schedule? So I'm going to go through that. Any of you who think this is some sort of great exercise, physical fitness thing, well, I just got back from Dairy Queen, so don't get your hopes up. But anyhow, before we do that, I want to talk about a couple things going on right now. Our good friends out at gohunt.com, if you go to their insider program, and there's banners all over our website, but they are giving a 30-day free trial to anyone who listens to our Hunt Talk Radio podcast or is a member of our Hunt Talk website. And you go to gohunt.com/Hunt Talk, HUNTTALK, and they're going to let you do a 30-day free trial. And it's the system I use. I know you guys have heard me talk about it a lot, but it's the real thing. It gives you all the information you need. There's a bunch of good stuff out there now about over-the-counter success rates. Just stuff that you aren't going to find in a lot of other places, and certainly not to the detail that you're going to find here. So go to gohunt.com/Hunt Talk. And that'll get you to that landing page that has the 30-day free trial. And then our good friends over at Onyx Maps, just today, they started rolling out a bunch of new stuff related to the Hunt app. And those of you who've been involved, you know what I'm talking about. A bunch of us got beta versions of this stuff, and we've been using it for the last few months and giving a lot of feedback. But if you go to Onyx Maps, onyxmaps.com, and you click on the purchase the Hunt app, and you use the promo code RANDY16, RANDY 16, you're going to get a 20% discount on any of the Hunt app products. And if there's kind of the new term over there, or maybe it's not new, but the term they use over at Onyx Maps, and I couldn't agree more, is hunt smarter. And that's exactly what I use this system and these maps, whether it's on my phone, whether it's the traditional map chip in my GPS. I just I use it so much, I almost take it for granted that everybody has it and that everybody uses it. But I come to realize not everyone does. So that's another great sponsor of this podcast. And last is, but certainly not least, is Orion Coolers. We're loading up the coolers, getting ready to hit the road here in a couple weeks. And they just sent me some of the new big ones, the big 85s. And man, I could almost camp in those, it looks like. But they are rugged, ready, reliable, and they do the job. So go to orioncoolers.com and check them out. I can assure you that you will like what you see. And I couldn't talk about these great sponsors without talking about the great sponsors of our TV show. And here's why. We just drew the winners for July of the big drawing, the big prize giveaway. And any of you who haven't seen it, go out to our YouTube channel. There's a video out there. Or go to a better place. Go to randynewberg.com. And the very first segment of randynewberg.com it's called the sweepstakes. Win thousands of dollars in prizes. Every month, we're giving away prizes from our TV sponsors, our podcast sponsors, our website sponsors. And there's 5 ways you get your name in the hat. You subscribe to our YouTube channel. You follow us on Facebook. You follow us on Instagram. You become a member of our Hunt Talk forum. Or you click right there on the page. You can say, I want to join your email list. Any and all of those will get you in the drawing. If you follow us on all 5 platforms, your name's in the drawing 5 times. So you got 5 times better odds than the person who's only following us once. So, and the reason I say that is the Orion Coolers got me thinking about it. One of the dudes out on Hunt Talk, his name got drawn as the winner of the Orion Cooler. Let's see. Facebook guy got drawn for a Sitka merino wool shirt. A Hunt Talk guy got drawn for a pair of Kenetrek boots. A Facebook person got drawn for some Onyx map stuff. A Hunt Talk person got drawn for the mystery gift from Howa. Another Hunt Talk person got drawn for a pair of binoculars from Leupold. So that's just the July drawing. We're doing this every month: July, August, September, October, November. And then in December, everyone who's been signed up, if you've signed up any or all of the 5 months or 6 months between July and December, or even if you've signed up on any of those platforms even before we had the started the drawing. So if you've been following us a long time, you're still in the drawing. But in December, that's the big one. This is like Christmas comes late, because the first week in January, we're going to draw one winner. We're not drawing single winners for every prize. In January, one person gets every prize. And we're beefing up the prizes for that drawing. Someone's getting a new Howa Alpine mountain rifle, the one you see us shoot on the show. They're getting a Leupold VX6 scope on top of that. They're getting a whole set of clothing from Sitka. They're going to get a Mystery Ranch pack, an Orion cooler, the set of Kenetrek boots, the Mountain Extremes that we use, a big gob of ammunition from Nosler. The list goes on and on. So all of those companies that are part of these platforms that we put together, I guess, go out there, register, follow us, and you're gonna be in the drawing for nothing. I mean, it doesn't cost you a dime. So we already did the July drawings. People are getting emails here in the next day or two. If you get an email from Randy Newberg, don't think it's a joke. Don't throw it in your trash. Or if you get a Facebook message, it means that you were one of the lucky people selected. So anyhow, all that out of the way, I'm just going to turn around here, and on my wall I have 3 whiteboards. One is a calendar of where I'm going to be at certain times of the year. The other calendar whiteboard is a list of how many tags we have by species, how many tags we have by weapon. And then the other whiteboard is what we're doing. It's a big workflow for our YouTube channel. But one of the questions that came, not one, many questions came this week, people asking about how we get ready for season. And I think a lot of people are wondering how we do the physical, workout, training, everything else. And I'm going to admit to not being the gung-ho, every day at the gym kind of guy. For one reason, mentally, I'm not a gym rat. I would rather lay out on you could stake me out naked on a hot asphalt parking lot in Phoenix in the heat of August before you could get me in the gym day after day. For those of you who can do it, man, I admire you. For me, every day, I have a trailhead here about a mile from my house, and I go for a 2.5 hour hike every day. And that is what I do for my training, if you want to call it that. If I want to get more cardio, well, then I just try to go faster. If I want to get more, and I guess you'd call it strength training, or at least durability for hauling loads, well, I just put more weight in my pack. And that's what I do. And I know that for a lot of people, they're thinking, well, that doesn't work. And maybe it doesn't for most folks. But for me, nothing replicates what I do and how I do it in the mountains when it comes to backpack elk hunting, like hiking with a heavy pack. And we're talking about the inclines, we're talking about side hilling, downhill, blowdowns, everything else. There's nothing I've found in a gym that replicates that. So that's what I do from a physical standpoint. And for those of you who are triathletes, run marathons, everything else, someday I wished I could have done that, but I don't. In the wintertime, I drive a desk for a living. So I have to be pretty diligent about my hiking and not getting behind. And in the wintertime, you can always find excuses because the days are shorter, the weather's crappy. But I have to find something that keeps me going in the wintertime, or I'll put on big layers of winter fat and it'll be just that much harder to get going in the spring. And then that's really as simple as it gets for me when it comes to physical conditioning. I'm very disciplined about it, and I do it, but I don't try to wear myself out. But the other logistics that come into play are a lot more complicated than I'll call it almost the mind freedom that comes with just going on a hike and letting your mind be away from phones and everything else. For me, the other part of it comes in, I've got to get public land film permits for every hunt we do, because we do all public land. And a lot of people don't realize that every hunt you see us do, we're getting a film permit from the BLM or the Forest Service. The BLM day rate is $250 a day for us to be out there. The Forest Service is $150 a day. And each forest has a different application fee, varies from $150 to $250. So it takes 60 to 90 days to get those permits completed and turned around. So I'm doing a lot of that. I'm obviously applying for tags early in the year, but over the summer, a big part of what it is just desk scouting. I would say that this time of year, I stand in front of my computer. I don't sit, because sitting is a good way to wreck your back. I stand in front of my computer for hours every day, researching, all right, where do I find water sources? These are places I've never been to. I've got maps laid out on the floor. I've got Google Earth. I've got my hunt app from Onyx Maps. I've got everything right here that I'm spending hours a day researching. And I know not everybody can do that. I mean, they've got real jobs and families and the whole works. So I'm fully aware that my life is a little bit different when it comes to strategizing and planning. But part of that is the fact that we show up to a place, most often we've never been there. Like, let's see, the Utah hunt this year, I've never been there before. The Arizona hunt, I've never been there before. The Wyoming deer hunt, never been there before. The Nevada hunt, I've never hunted that unit before. Let's see. New Mexico pronghorn, I've never hunted that before. The Colorado elk, I've never hunted that before. So you go to these places you've never been to, and you only have 5 days to figure it out. The last thing you want to do is show up without a good plan, without, at least to the extent possible, having eliminated as many of the variables as are out there. Because we all know when you're a traveling hunter and you're going to a new state that you've not hunted before, even it's in your own state, but it's 300 miles away, it's a new unit you've never hunted before, a lot can go wrong. You can make a lot of false assumptions. And I kind of focus, I'm going to say this, and I don't know if it'll translate well, but when I do an Alaska bear hunt, here's an analogy. Once I plant my stake in the ground that this is where we're going to camp, this is the island we're going to hunt. We're going to hunt this part of that island because they are our beaches, blah, blah, blah. That is the most critical decision I make in my entire planning process. And the same applies, but maybe I'm a little more mobile in an elk hunt or a deer hunt or an antelope hunt or whatever it is. When I go to Colorado and I've got 5 days to fill this elk tag, when I decide this is where we're basing our operation, that is the most critical decision I've now made in the entire hunt. Because every day of hunting, the amount of time I spend driving from camp to the trailhead, driving back at night, how I'm going to be able to get around if the weather does this or the weather does that, my estimate or my guess of how many other people are going to be hunting the same spot or not hunting the same spot. That's the most important part of my decision in this planning process. And there's sometimes I've really screwed that up. I mean, there's times I'm like, what in the heck was I thinking setting up shop here? Because sometimes you can salvage it. You know, you get there and you're like, boy, this is a bad idea after day 1 or day 2. I'm just going to have to sacrifice a morning or an afternoon, pull my camp, go somewhere else, and know that what was a 5-day hunt has really become a 2-day hunt, and you hope that you can pull it off. So that's why I spend so much time deciding where I'm going to base operation from. And a lot of it depends on, is this an archery hunt or a rifle hunt? You know, is it early season, late season? Is snow going to restrict my ability to move around or not? Do I need shade because it's August, or no, it's November, so I don't need shade? It's just such a multitude of things. And then you're trying to overlay that with what season am I hunting the animals in? Okay, is it early season? Is it pre-rut? Is it peak rut? Is it post-rut? Is it late season? Because even though we've done this big YouTube series about how the 5 phases of the elk calendar, you can use that same application to deer. I mean, you think about mule deer. They have an early season, which most of our archery seasons, they're still in velvet and they're up in the high alpine basins. Then we have a pre-rut, which is, you know, probably the last half of October, maybe not even that, last 10 days of October, first 5 days of November. Then we have a peak rut that is probably like, I don't know, November 5th through the 25th. Then we have a post rut, kind of into early December, and then we've got a late season. But for mule deer, we don't hunt them much after the pre-rut. You know, most of the states, at least in rifle seasons, most of the stuff we're going to be doing with mule deer is going to be an early season or a pre-rut season. If you're lucky and you draw a limited entry tag, or you live in a state like Montana where we can hunt them with a rifle in the rut, you get to do that. Whereas elk, you know, we hunt elk throughout all 5 of those season periods. And you could do the same thing for antelope or whatever. But the reason I bring that up is where those animals are going to be on your map, in your unit, and what needs they have and where they're going to go on your map or in your unit to satisfy those needs is directly driven by what season period it is. And that should drive where you decide to set up shop, where you're going to find multiple options for a 5-day hunt. So we have these checklists, these booklets. They kind of all look the same. It's kind of fill in the blank. Okay, it's elk, it's Colorado, it's this season, it's blah blah blah, and then you have all of our equipment lists, all our camp lists, all of our camera gear, the shot lists. What we think the storyline's going to be. Unfortunately, the elk and the other animals never read the storyline or the script. And quite often I forget the script, and sometimes we forget to tell the guest hunter the script. So this time of year, it is all planning. It is crazy amounts of planning. And it's more of that planning than it is practice out at the range, whether it's my bow or my rifle. Fortunately, I've got an archery range here in my yard where I go out every morning. I burn 12 arrows in the morning. I go out sometime around lunch, burn 10 or 12 more, and in the evening I burn 10 or 12 more. I try to get out to the range 2 to 3 days a week this time of year because things are starting to get closer. And once I hit the road in August for my archery hunts, I'm not going to have a lot of time to dial in rifles if I've got anything going wrong. And fortunately, that's usually not a problem. The equipment I use is way better than I am. Let's put it that way. So there's all of those planning things. We're trying to plan for travel arrangements for us, for the camera crew, for guest hunters, everything else. But the other thing that is really critical to what we do, and we're getting ready to do some YouTube videos on this for our YouTube channel, is planning our meals. If you go on a 5-7 day hunt, you can usually deal with dehydrated or less than homemade food for that long. But when we're on the road 75 to, 110 days a year, you just can't keep your energy levels and everything else up day after day, week after week, hunt after hunt, without having good food. So right now, this time of year, my wife, Kim, bless her heart, is almost like running a small commercial kitchen here. She is making, and I would do it, but I'm nowhere near the cook she is. And she likes doing it, or so she says she does. So I'm going to let her keep doing it. At our house, we say, "Oh, you're good at that." That means that's your job. If at our house you say you're good at that. But this time of year, she's making big pans of lasagna, big kettles of chili, spaghetti, all kinds of home-cooked meals, chicken and noodles, you name it. And what we do is we take those meals and we cut them into above average serving sizes. Serving sizes bigger than you would use at home. And then we put them in the food saver bags and we seal them. And then we freeze them. So when we head out for 2 or 3 weeks, I've got enough frozen homemade meals, at least dinner meals, for me and the camera crew every night. Because when you get off the mountain and you've just hiked 12 miles and the snow is coming down in November, the last thing you want to do is a big meal back at camp. And here's how it works. It's this easy. We have a big boiling pot. You can make it a tea kettle. You can make it just a boiling pot like you use for corn on the cob or whatever, with a lid on it. And we keep the same water in that every day. We fire up the stove and we throw the meals, the freezer bags, the food saver bags, in that boiling water, and we let it boil for about 10 minutes with the lid on. And you pull those out of there. All you gotta do is clip the bag open, dump it on your plate, and you're ready to go. I mean, it is way, way better meal. It gives you way more energy. It's not the high sodium, high everything else meal that some of the dehydrated stuff is. And you're ready to go. And the other part is then you don't have this big preparation time and you don't have all this cleanup time. So planning those meals is a huge part of what we do this time of year. And these meals are like a lifesaver. And every guest hunter we have, they're like, "Whoa, who made this?" And I'd like to take credit for it, but my wife does it all. And even on warm weather hunts, a lot of people have asked us, "Well, how do you keep that stuff from spoiling? How do you keep it frozen?" And what we do, we have our big Orion coolers, and we'll take gallon or half gallon milk jugs, and we'll fill them not all the way to the top, close to the top, because we know that when water freezes, it expands. So if you fill it all the way to the top, it's either going to crack the jug or pop the lid. So we do that, and we take 1 or 2 coolers, and we just layer the bottom of it with these meals, and then we lay those frozen jugs on top. And we keep that cooler in the shade. We keep a blanket over it. We only open it when we got to grab something. And those meals will stay good for 10 days to 2 weeks, even in hot weather. So usually we're not on the road for much longer than that in the hot weather periods. In the cold weather periods, obviously, you just, if it's getting down to 20 degrees every night and getting only up in the 40s, not too much worry about food spoilage. But that's how we use those coolers. And that's another question that came is, how do we take care of, or how do we keep meat from spoiling when we're out on these hunts? Like next month in September, Corey Jacobson and I will be in New Mexico. And every time I've hunted that place in mid-September, it can get pretty darn hot. And if we shoot a bull, you don't want to take a full day to run into town, find someplace, come back and whatever. When you're way out in the hinterlands, any of you who've hunted the Gila knows how far that is from anywhere. So what we do, we will bring 1 cooler that is nothing but frozen milk or frozen milk jugs. And we will not open that cooler. It will sit in the shade with a blanket over it until we need it. And we shoot an animal. We'll hang it overnight, let the wind blow on it, keep it in the shade. And overnight, the amount of heat that will go out of that meat it's amazing. If you want to spoil some meat, don't let it hang overnight and just quickly dump it in a cooler. It's going to be a problem. If it's a small animal like an antelope or something, that heat gets out of that meat in a hurry. But if you're talking, game bags full of just solid masses of warm meat, that's a good way for it to spoil. So usually what we do when we have the animal on the ground and we break it down, we will usually not bone it the first night. We will hang it in our caribou game bags. And from that, the fact that it's hanging in a game bag, one, it keeps flies and dirt off, but it also is this huge amount of surface area. And when those of you who are engineers, when we took heat and mass transfer, we know that surface area is definitely a byproduct or a variable in how fast something cools. That's how we do it. We usually let it hang overnight. We might bring that night when we come out, we might bring smaller pieces, backstraps, tenderloins, some other pieces. But even those pieces, we let those hang that night and get as cool as possible. The next morning, they're going to be very cool if the wind's been blowing on them. And then we start, if it's a long distance, we'll start shuttling meat that's been boned out. If it's not boned out, or if it's not a long distance, we won't bone it out. We might when we get to camp, just because now we know, okay, the meat's as cooled as it can get. We can get it in these coolers, and then we will go to the cooler that has all of the frozen milk jugs. And we will put those milk jugs on top of the meat. Because remember, heat rises, cold air is heavier, it drops. So don't put the meat on top of the ice, put the ice on top of the meat. And that's why I don't use crushed ice. I don't use ice cubes. I don't use block ice. Because over the course of a few days, that ice starts melting, and I want it to be contained in those water jugs when the ice starts melting. I don't want my meat laying in a bunch of water. And those milk jugs will save the day. I don't, I've got a bunch of them in my freezer at all times. Some of them are a bit bloody and gunky looking because of how many times I've used them to do on these long trips like this. But those of you who are traveling, coming out west to do hunts this year, and I don't care if it's antelope hunts, mule deer hunts, elk hunts, if you're doing it yourself and you're going to bring the meat home yourself, think about doing it that way. And even if you're going to be driving home and maybe some of your ice in those milk jugs has melted, a lot of the water stores in the West, you'll be surprised how many places you can go and buy water. Those water stores will also have frozen jugs. So if you can replace those, and if you have to, a little bit of dry ice will go a long ways on your trip home, and just get that meat home and safe from spoilage as good as possible. So that's another thing that we're planning for in this season. And I know some of these things are things we have to consider because we're filming and we got all those other complications. But a lot of this stuff is just things that we are planning, whether we were filming or not. And preparation or I guess preservation of the meat and the meat quality is something that we take very serious. And everybody who's a traveling hunter has that same complication in front of them when the time comes. So I hope that covers what the person asked out here on Hunt Talk about how do you guys get ready for all this. Another person, and they brought up a really good question, and I'm almost embarrassed to answer it because of how stupid it is for me to be in this situation. A couple people asked about hunting with either a suppressor or a silencer, or at least using hearing protection on the show. And I'm embarrassed to say that at the time when I grew up, hearing protection was not anything that people worried about that much. As stupid as that sounds today, I was, out in the woods running chainsaws, working in sawmills, doing all kinds of really noisy things, shooting shotguns, shooting rifles, never wearing hearing protection. I don't think I wore hearing protection until I was probably 19 years old. And I know it sounds stupid, but that's just how it was at that time. And now I don't have a really good reason for why I don't wear it on the show, other than I have tried some of them and I've probably not got the good ones. As far as the electronic ones that supposedly will stop the high decibel noises but allow you to hear well. When I tried those, the wind just drove me nuts. Anytime there was wind, I couldn't hear anything. So after that person's comment and how embarrassingly obvious it is that I should probably be wearing hearing protection, if nothing else, as an example for young people who we don't want to have tinnitus and ringing in the ears that I have every day. Yeah, I'm picking up a pair of those hearing, they kind of come on, almost looks like a headband, a couple little plugs on the ends of them that they go in your ear. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to do. And another person asked me, well, why don't you use suppressors or silencers? A couple of reasons. One, I don't own one. Another reason is not every state allows you to hunt with them. Our state of Montana just recently allowed that. And since I don't have one, I don't know how it's going to affect my accuracy, my ballistics, and everything else. Maybe it doesn't affect it at all. But that's the honest answer, the easy answer about why it's that way. I wish I could tell you that there was a good reason for it. So another person asks, how do you decide where you're going to hunt, what you're going to hunt? Why don't I ever see you hunting in the east? Why don't I see you hunting other species? And I'll just tell you that is driven by a few things. One, when we put this entire platform together, we wanted to feature public land hunting in the West, self-guided public land hunts. And so when we went and started building relationships with sponsors, what we told the networks, everything else, we've represented that we're going to do public land hunts in the West. And if you think about if you're an ad agency that represents a sponsor, you go and you allocate your sponsor's money trying to target different audiences. Okay, with this rifle or this shotgun or whatever, I want to reach the whitetail hunter. I want to reach the mule deer hunter, the elk hunter, the waterfowl hunter, whatever. So when they allocate to us, they tell us, Randy, part of your purpose, what you've told us you do, is that our allocation of funds here will help us reach the Western big game audience. So that's a business side answer to that. The practical, Randy's really not that smart of a guy answer is that I'm not a good turkey hunter. In fact, I'm the worst turkey hunter you probably ever met. So unless we want to put this on the comedy channel, I don't know what value would come from me turkey hunting, because I'm not going to give anyone a tip or a tactic that helps in any way, shape, or form. I'm probably going to be using the wrong gear, the wrong everything. So that's part of why you don't see us doing that. Whitetails, you see us do a few whitetail hunts once in a while. This year, actually, on the docket, we have 3 whitetail tags that you're going to see us doing. But again, those are Western whitetails. It's a completely different type of hunting, different style of hunting. And, so we will do some of that, but to think you're going to see us do waterfowl hunts, at least on the TV show, we're going to start doing a lot more of these 1 or 2 day kind of hunts. Maybe it's a duck hunt, maybe it's a whatever hunt. We're going to be doing those on our YouTube channel. So I hope that answers the question. It may not be the good answer why, but we want to stick to things we're good at. And when I say that we're good at, that implies that I know what I'm doing when I'm elk or antelope or mule deer hunting. And it seems like I go out of my way every year to prove that that's not the case. But I hope that gets people to understand how we approach this. And the other complication we have is, just about all of the places we hunt, when you're a traveling non-resident, you have to put into a draw. And so we're applying for draws starting in December with Alaska, and then we go to Wyoming elk in January. In February, we've got Arizona elk and antelope. And then in March, we've got probably half of our applications are due in March or early April. So we got to be ahead of the game. And once you start applying for all those tags and you draw a few of them, you're not going to turn back a Nevada mule deer hunt to say, oh, I want to go and, shoot, hunt, whatever it might be, ducks for a day or two. In November, you're going to go do that deer hunt. All that being said, I'm going on one of the, how do I say this? There are certain hunts that all of us do that have a huge amount of tradition and just personal satisfaction. And for me, a lot of those are bird hunts. So now that we have the YouTube channel, one of the things you're going to see every year, you're going to see some of these just, Randy wanted to go do this. And if you don't want to watch, that's fine. But this is completely nothing but fun. And so I'm going to Yuma, Arizona, in early September. I'm going to take a weekend, and I'm going to go do something I used to do all the time when I went to college in Arizona and when I was going to college in Nevada: hunt doves. And I know some of you are thinking, dove hunting? Come on, Newberg, get over it. Well, I'm here to tell you, I have as much fun dove hunting as just about anything I do. It's way easier to carry a limit of doves than it is a limit of elk. You usually go out for your morning shoot. You come back in, have breakfast, cup of coffee, go take a nap, and then you go out for your afternoon shoot. And man, you talk about burn the gunpowder, at least if you're a marginal shot like I am. I think in Arizona now the limit's 15 a day. So if my shooting is like it normally is on doves, 15 doves, yeah, I better bring at least 75 rounds with me. Hopefully not that bad, but anyhow, that's going to end up on our YouTube channel. And the simple reason being, it's just, we want to show people how much fun hunting is. It doesn't have to be pain and agony and drudgery. Yeah, there's those times where there's that kind of fun that you never forget about. But there's so many hunts you can do for just 1 or 2 days. There are probably more of them in your backyard than you probably ever realized. And it brings me back to a time when I just hunted because I loved the smell of gunpowder, and I was a starving college student, and if I could get a few extra meals from the smell of gunpowder, all the better. So we're going to do that one. I think that we're going to try squeak in. I just don't know if the schedule's going to allow. We're going to try sneak in a December waterfowl hunt here in Montana, because some of my first memories were sitting in the duck blind way before I was allowed to hunt. But my dad and my uncles and my grandfather, we'd go over to the Red River country over by Grigla, Minnesota, and we would get ready for opening morning. And it was a big, oh gosh, it was such a big cultural, traditional thing that I've never been able to shake the waterfowl bug. I never will, and if I do, that's probably the day that they retire my shotguns or retire me to the pine box. But so we might try to do that next year. There's a very good chance you'll see us rough grouse hunting in Minnesota. And a couple things we're going to start doing on YouTube with some of these 1 or 2 day hunts. And I'm not sure how it's going to go over. I'm not sure what the feedback's going to be, but I'll give you an example. So I didn't draw my antelope tag here in Montana this year. I drew my second choice, which is an archery tag. Well, I didn't find out about it until yesterday, which was August 1st. Season opens August 15th for the archery hunt. There's no way I can get a public land film permit turned around to that point. So there's a chance that I might go bang on some doors, and we might just do a 1 day hunt or a 2 day hunt. And it won't be public land. And we'll tell people that, this isn't public land, and it'll be on our YouTube channel, not on TV. But we'll tell people, if we're going to do these 1 or 2 day hunts to show people, this is something we do. This is maybe an idea, a strategy we have, because we do a lot of antelope hunting. We do a lot of archery antelope hunting. It's just a reality of what I have to deal with. And I know now some of you, your minds are spinning saying, well, wait a second, I see some of these other guys doing this. Well, I don't have an answer to how they're getting film permits, if they're getting film permits or whatever. But I get film permits. And there's some things we want to do going forward that we're just not going to have the time to do it. Or if we're going to do a 2 day archery antelope hunt, out on BLM land, I'd have a $250 application fee. I'd have 2 days at $250. It cost me $750 just for those 2 days of filming to the public agency. And for YouTube videos, that just doesn't pencil out. So if you see us doing some of those, I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea why. And we'll certainly let you know if ever it's not public land. But so then I'm now plowing through some of these other questions here. And if you haven't been out to our YouTube channel, we just launched another exclusive, not exclusive, I should say, another episode out on our YouTube channel. This one is a New Mexico elk hunt. And if you go back to podcast number, can't remember which one it is, but it was a podcast with the folks at Leupold, Bruce Pettit and Tim Lesser. And we talked about the hunt that we had with Bruce. And this New Mexico elk hunt, it was brutal. Most people heard us talk about how brutal it was, but I think they're like, that's just, kind of whining and sniveling, and it can't be that bad, da-da-da. Well, it was, it was bad. And when you see it, you'll know. I think the one with Bruce, if I remember right, that was podcast episode 20, 21, something like that. Yeah. Anyhow, something like that. Was it that? Yeah. So, No, wait a second. I'm going backwards here. I'm looking at the iTunes list. I think it was somewhere between episode 13 and episode 15. So it was 13, 14, or 15. Anyhow, on that podcast, we had Bruce and Tim from Leupold. And out on the YouTube channel, just yesterday, we launched that hunt in its entirety. And then the other things that we're doing on the YouTube channel, and in addition to the big, what we call hub content, or the big tent event is what they call it in YouTube language. So you have the big tent event, which is an episode itself. In addition to that, we're putting all these other types of content in there. And with this one, there's links to how we do this gutless method when we process an elk, when we get one on the ground. You'll see that it's really, really tough sledding. And so in addition to that, we have a YouTube video about how we use trekking poles and how we can go hands-free while we're out doing our hiking and hunting. We talk about another one at the end is the spotting scopes that we use, because we use 2 different spotting scopes in this hunt, and we used them for 2 different reasons. We talk about the rangefinder we use, and then with all of these hunts, we're trying to show the rifle, the scope, the bullet in the rifle hunts. We want to show, okay, here's what you saw us using. And we spend 3 to 4 minutes just explaining what we use, why we're using that. We get lots and lots of questions about that. So if you go out to the YouTube channel, you're going to see a lot of that going on. So now we've had a Montana elk hunt. That's a YouTube exclusive. That one will never be on TV. The one with Bruce, it was on TV last month, but it's got a tremendous amount of views already just in the first day it's been on YouTube. And then I think on August 15th or 16th, we're going to put another one up on YouTube, which is a hunt some of you saw on TV it's a Montana archery elk hunt. It's me and Corey Jacobson, or Corey Jacobson and I, out hunting archery elk here in September, Montana, public land, general unit. Anybody, in fact, right now, you could still go buy that tag for the upcoming year. Corey says it was a grouse hunt. And when you see that hunt out on YouTube, or if you've seen it on TV, you will know that I got a serious grouse problem. So that one's going to be out there. We thought about trying to make an ancillary piece to that, a piece of hub content about how to hunt grouse with a bow, but we didn't know if that'd go over very well. But that's a big part of what you're seeing on our YouTube effort that we're doing right now. And if you want to see more stuff on YouTube, send us an email, go out to Hunt Talk, go out to our YouTube channel, wherever, Facebook, and let us know what it is you want to see, because we've done tons and tons and tons of content, and we've got so much stuff in the can. You know, when you've produced TV like we have for the last 9 years, you're going to have an awful lot of content that never made it to TV, because we shoot 15 to 20 hours of content for every 22 minute, 23 minutes of content that you see in an episode. So that gives us, I guess, ample inventory to do this other stuff that we'd like to do. One of the things that's the last podcast episode before this one I'm recording tonight was me and Janis Butelis, and we talked about trying to put some context to what I'll call long-distance shooting versus long-distance hunting, no matter the weapon or how you do it. And we got a lot of feedback on that. I was very, very happy to see how much feedback. Not everybody agrees, and I certainly don't expect everybody to agree with me. But if you haven't listened to that one, go give it a listen. I'd be interested to hear from all of you if you want more of that kind of topic, less of that kind of topic. We've got these big platforms, and we've invested a lot of our time, energy, and money in building them. And we don't want them to just be how to, 8 ways to kill a bigger buck this year. We want to push the envelope. We want us to be talking about things that, let's just face it, things that are a little bit introspective about we as hunters, both individually and collectively as the community that we're a part of. So I thought that one we handled pretty good. Maybe I'm biased because I get to control the discussion, and it ends up being what I want it to be at that time. And so maybe it didn't turn out quite as good as I thought. So another one that is getting cranked up, and I'm gonna spend the last half of this podcast talking about this because we've been doing this YouTube video series about this notion that is called public land transfer, and this gets into the political world and people who know me, people who've known me for a long time, know that I don't really give a crap about political parties. I don't know what tag people would hang on me. I guess independent, bullheaded, stupid. A lot of tags probably fit. But if you go back to the almost one of the first podcasts with me, I think, let's see, who was on there with me? I think Dan Doty and I did this. It was all about this notion of what's called public land transfer. And the idea behind that is that, we should give the land to the states. And if we give it to the states, they'll manage it better, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyone who knows anything about state land boards in the West, and that's what this whole series we've done on YouTube is about. It's 16 episodes. I think we've launched, let's see, I think we've launched the first 11. So we've got 5 to go. It spends a lot of time talking about all that, really what it represents, how it would work logistically. We look at the state land boards of each of the states and say, could they do this? What would they do? We point out how restrictive these state land boards are when it comes to hunting or hiking or camping or recreational shooting, and how the hundreds of millions of acres that we currently can do all that stuff on because it's BLM land and U.S. Forest Service land, how we would lose the right to do all that, or some of that, or in some cases all of that, if this land got transferred to the state land boards. So in a political year, when you do a video series that talks about not headed ideas that bought and paid for politicians are trying to promote, you're going to raise a lot of hackles. And it seems like I've really been good at that this year. A lot of you, if you don't listen to the Gritty Bowman podcast, you should. Brian and the crew out there do a great job. Brian had me on the Gritty Bowman podcast. It was over at the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers in April. And we just went on for an hour and a half on this topic. And Brian's a fun guy to get worked up about it because he shares the same passion for it that I do. He's well informed on it. And it's been a lot of fun in the last year to see how hunters have really grabbed a hold of this idea and threw it, kind of crumpled it up in a big ball and threw it in the trash, and how vocal a lot of hunters are against this idea. And it creates this contradiction in the minds of some people. And I'm going to try to explain it, and I don't know if I'll do a good job, but a lot of people will say, Randy, I can't believe that you're such a big proponent of state-based wildlife management, but yet you don't want state ownership of land. And if I have a minute, I try to explain to them, well, let's do the easy part first. The easy part is that state ownership of wildlife has been established in this country under the 10th Amendment going back since time began. 1842 is the first court case. But if you want to go to the United States Constitution, even further back, that's when it said that the state shall retain rights all rights other than those granted to the federal government. And the states never gave away their right in wildlife. So if you're a true constitutional thinker, you want state-based management of wildlife. And then it gets a little more complicated because now we have a lot of people who try to interpret the Constitution differently than the U.S. Supreme Court has always interpreted it when it comes to federal ownership of land. There's been case after case after case after case where people tried to say that the federal government can't own land, blah, 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 blah. Well, they got their butt handed to them every time. And so there's two parts to why I advocate against state transfer is because I call it a head fake, if you want to use a basketball analogy. There's nothing about state transfer. Transferring these lands to state trust, the state land boards or state trust lands, whatever you want to call them. Transferring BLM and Forest Service lands to the states to be held and managed by their state land boards solves nothing. Zero. Nothing. And Congress, having a large population of spineless snivellers among them who don't want to work hard, have completely walked away from the responsibility of managing public lands for the last 30 years. So rather than roll up their sleeves and do the hard work, a bunch of them on the fringe have decided, well, let's just give the land to the states because we know that the states can't afford it. They don't have the printing presses that the federal government has. So they'll have to sell these lands because if you go read either the state constitutions or the state statutes that govern their land boards, it says that if these assets are unprofitable, they must be disposed of. So the idea for some of these fringe operators is, well, we've always wanted to sell these public lands. Here's how we can do it. We can use the states as a conduit. We'll give them the land. We'll give them all the maintenance backlog that we in Congress refuse to fund. We'll give them all the costs and liabilities related to forest fires and wildfire. We'll give them all the liability related to roads and bridges and all the other things. And there's no way they can afford to keep it. So guess what? They'll have to sell it. And then we can look at our buddies who are kind of paying our way here and say, guess what, guys? We got it done. And, I wish I could say I was tongue in cheek in that, but that's really the scheme of how it's intended to play out. So I go back to people and say, you know what? There is nothing that's going to change land management by transferring it to the state. Nothing. Zero. The Endangered Species Act is still going to be there. All the things that people say we get litigated over and stops management. That's not going to change. The global trade policies that make the United States, at least in the northern states, uncompetitive when it comes to timber and lumber, that's not going to change. The Canadians are still going to have the opportunity to flood the market with softwood lumber. That's not going to change. There's so many other things that are not going to change with state management. If you look at the YouTube video, I think it's episode number 11 or 12, that is the YouTube episode. And there we make reference to the economic studies that were done by the economists at Utah State, University of Utah, and I think Brigham Young University. It's over 800 pages. But the important parts of it are that in order for Utah to be able to make this work, they would need oil and gas prices to be a little over $90 a barrel. Right now, it's bouncing from the high 30s to the low 50s. Well, they would need natural gas prices to be over $5 per unit. Right now, I think it's bouncing around $2.50 plus or minus a little bit, $2.50. There's no way that, and the economists just flat out say in their opinion that under without high commodity prices, there is no way that Utah could afford these lands, and therefore they'd have to dispose of them. And that applies to all the western states. So you think about how our commodity markets, oil and gas markets, and other stuff can be manipulated based on how foreign companies, foreign countries, let's use oil, for example. If OPEC wakes up one morning and says, we want to drive oil and gas or oil prices into the tank, we will just produce like crazy because we're going to show those American producers that we're still the boss. We're going to have oil prices about where they were in February, down into the high 20s. And between you and I, well, not just between you and I, I'll just say personally, I don't want these lands in the hands of state agencies that would be forced to sell these lands because the Saudi prince got up one morning and decided he wanted to run the oil market into the ground. It's not where I want to be. So I could go on and on about why I'm against state transfer. Another big reason why I'm against state transfer is it completely takes our eye off the bigger picture. And Dan Ash, he is the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He gave a pretty interesting presentation at the TRCP, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partners Media Summit this summer. And whether some of it you might agree with, some you might disagree with, but he gave some pretty valid points there. That we are at a conservation crossroads. That we as hunters, anglers, and just any conservationists, we're at a point in this country where we got to make some hard decisions. And this whole state transfer thing does nothing but distract us from those hard tasks ahead of us. It's almost like, okay, we've got to fight these big battles ahead as it relates to conservation, as it relates to public lands, blah, blah, blah. And now we got people lighting backfires behind us with this stupid idea called state transfer. And I get to talk to all kinds of these supposed experts on this topic. Well, I used to. I don't get too much anymore because very few of them have answers to the questions I pose. Tell me how you're going to pay for this. Tell me how you're going to make this work. Tell me this, tell me that, blah, blah, blah. And they don't have answers. None of them have answers. They know what the eventual outcome will be, and they just hope that the general public has enough frustration that they can capitalize on that frustration and convince Congress to get rid of these lands. And a lot of people think that this effort is the states, because Utah is the one state that's suing the federal government to try and force the federal government to give the federal lands to Utah. And they know they're going to lose. So now they're starting to rethink that, but they have some folks in their legislature who, I don't know if they're friends with the attorneys that would make all the fees on this lawsuit or what. But anyhow, there's that approach. But the real approach, here's the bigger strategy they have. They want to keep planting the seed out on the landscape that the federal government is inept, that the federal land agencies, blah, 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 blah. And then they want to do it as a congressional action. Let's have Congress give these lands to the state land board. Because if Congress decides to give these lands to the state land boards, there's nothing you and I can do about it. Nothing. Zero. Now, if they tried to force some sort of crazy legal theory that has failed every time it's been tried up to this point, there's a lot we can do about it. We can, get our groups together and we can go to court and fight it. So really, this whole state transfer thing out on the landscape is kind of these groups wanting to try, if you want to use a military term, soften the beachheads with artillery to prepare for the bigger effort that's coming. That is to try to convince Congress to get rid of these lands. And so I hope that gives people some idea of why I'm against state transfer. It's stupid. It doesn't solve anything. It's going to result in the disposal of lands. And even if for some miracle it didn't result in disposal, the state land boards have such restrictive laws on hunting, fishing, shooting, and camping, the things I love to do, that the freedoms I have to do that on BLM and Forest Service lands would either go away completely or be heavily restricted if somehow those states didn't sell the lands and were able to keep them. None of that means that we don't have a lot of work to do on federal land management. We have a lot of work to do. It's been neglected for years and years and years. It's the federal land agencies have been the whipping boys in the courts, been the whipping boys in Congress. When you want to use your lands as the political football, as the chip by which you sit at the poker table and pay your ante, guess what? You're not going to have the kind of land management that we'd all like to see. That's just an absolute fact. And this whole idea of state transfer just is a deferral. It's a kick in the can down the road. It's a smoke screen. It's a head fake. It's a whatever you want to call it. Everybody knows that, but there's a lot of money in DC and in other places that would love to see the decade-long struggle of disposing of public federal lands. They would love to see that happen because they're in a position to make a lot of money off it. They're in a position to acquire a lot of power from it, and it's one of those over my dead body kind of things. And now I'm really going to piss off some people here. But I don't really care because we're getting ready to shoot a video that wraps up this series of the land transfer. The last two videos are going to be who's behind it and what is behind it. And then the very last one is going to be what you can do about it. So before I start pissing off too many people, I'm going to try give some background and maybe look at it from a different perspective than maybe we've heard it talked about before. But for people who I don't even know where to start with this because it's such a long explanation, but you've heard me say I grew up in a logging family, right? I have lots and lots of friends who are loggers, mill workers. I mean, that's what my family came from, was the resource industry of the renewable timber resource. Well, we as a society, we as a country, we as politicians, or those as politicians, decided quite a while back, 20, 30 years ago, that we're going to enter into a global economy. We're going to have huge societal priority changes in how we view and use our public lands, which, you know, that's society's right to do that. So let's just look at global trade. You know, and again, I'll use my example of the logging world near the Canadian border. When we opened up our markets to Canada, Canada heavily subsidizes its logging and timber industry, heavily subsidizes it. So for most of those producers within, you know, some distance of the Canadian border, the borders are open for the most part to that trade. There's been times where there's supposedly competitive tariffs and other stuff put on, but they expire and they don't get renewed and da-da-da. Well, the Canadians kind of control and are infusing huge amounts of their timber products into the market here in the United States. And that happens in areas where maybe, you know, you get far enough south where just the sheer cost of delivery eats away the competitiveness that the Canadians get through all their subsidies from the government. So what does that have to do with land transfer? Here's what it has to do, in my mind. And this is me seeing it in many small communities I travel to, many people I know in these types of industries, is now we've entered into a trade policy that makes our industries and all the jobs that come with it uncompetitive. And, you know, some people say, well, too bad, get over it. You know, that's life, change, get on with it. All right, that's all fine to say it that way. But not everybody can do that for a lot of reasons. You know, some people, they've went and borrowed lots of money to start a business in a little town. And now due to a change in our trade policies with some of our neighbors, what supported that town has completely went in the tank. And now they're sitting on a business loan with, you know, hardly any way to pay it back. So those who say just move on and get on with it are implying that these proud business owners are supposed to just walk away from their bank loans or their SBA loans and say, well, that's not my problem. That's just not the makeup of those people. You have these people who, you know, let's let's put some real life faces to this problem. Maybe they have ill parents that they're the ones who got to take care of them. Okay, their economic opportunities, or this get on with it idea, they can only get on with it and move forward to the degree that they're still within proximity of taking care of their elderly parents. Okay, you're the school teacher and you came to this small town to teach, and things were going okay when you got there, so you bought a house, and now when the market completely crapped the bed, property values are down 50% or 60%, and you're sitting on a mortgage that is way upside down. Even though the rest of the world is like, man, property values have recovered. All right, get on with it, huh? Just walk away from your mortgage. So the reason I say that is I'm just trying to lay out a small example of realities of people who are affected by this whole thing we call global economics. And in large part, a lot of them are people who are dependent on resource-based industries. A lot of them are rural people. And so you keep hitting the reset button on a global economic war, if you want to call it that. And then you come along and we as a society say, okay, we want to change our land uses to this or that or whatever. And hey, these are public lands, whatever society wants to do. But once again, the reset button gets hit to people in a lot of these industries, whether it's, I keep using this example, timber, but it could be mining, it could be, agriculture, it could be whatever it might be. And you keep hitting the reset button. And these folks are there scratching, trying to make a living, trying to honor their commitments and obligations that they have in life. But every time they turn around, it seems like either the politicians and their global policy or courts or society as a whole says, no, we're going to hit the reset button and, we're going to leave you folks out here in the hinterlands and we're going to head back to our nice, lovely condos in Tucson and LA and San Francisco and Chicago and DC and New York. You guys deal with it. Well, that's the fuel. It's that kind of mindset, or I don't know if it's mindset, but just it's that history of fact patterns in my mind that is fuel for people to start listening to the carnies who are preaching the ideas of things like state transfer. It's not like my friends who are loggers get up in the morning and say, let me see if I can find some crazy politician to pitch me on some cockamamie scheme. It's not like the coal miners who are now out of work in northeast Wyoming or southeast Montana or in eastern Utah wake up every morning and say, gee, who's the biggest fringe operator I can find today? I want to throw my support behind that person. That's not how it works. These people have real lives who've been heavily, heavily impacted by a lot of decisions we as society have made. Whether it's in our politics and economic policy, whether it's our social decisions that we make about our land uses. And they don't want to be, quote unquote, taken care of. They want just the opportunity to have the same American dream all the rest of us have. And if there's, and I know I'm going to really annoy some people with some of these terms I'm going to use, but I'm going to use them because I hear them when I talk to some of these people, and they express their frustrations to me. They call them the environmental elite, the educational elite. People, and I don't know if that's the right term, but I've heard it used enough times that I used it just now. People love to come and say, you know what, we think we should change this land use or that land use or blah, 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 or I want this or I want that, or you know what, we're in the majority, so we don't think that you guys should be using the land or the water or the wildlife for this purpose or that purpose. And since we're the big majority, just shut up and like it. Or, you know what, we'll fund our organizations with enough money, we can take you to court and we're going to get the law, the courts to rule this way, or we're going to take our lobbying money to Congress and we're going to get this changed. And if you're in the shoes of those people out there who are affected by it, there comes a time where you say, okay, yeah, I know, I understand that was one of the risks of doing business in a resource industry, or one of the risks of building a business model that had some dependency on public assets. Even though I was leasing them, or I was paying stumpage, or I was paying royalties, whatever. But that doesn't change their daily reality, their daily worries, their daily lives, that, you know what? While everyone else has their American dream, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to pay off this mortgage I'm upside down on. While everybody else is out thinking about, gee, my 401k is really doing good, I'm trying to take care of my sick parents, and my wife and I are now each working 2 part-time jobs because the mill closed, or the mine closed, or the whatever. And to add insult to injury, they turn on the news, and the United States, we as a country, have money for every other cause you can think of. Foreign causes, foreign people, refugees, this disenfranchised group of, workers, this group that we slice and dice in society. But for some reason, America doesn't have time or money for me and my community. Put yourself in those shoes, and then think about how you would feel if time after time you tried to do the right thing. You tried to be the good American. You tried to be the guy and the gal who said, you know what? Yeah, we can make this work. I've compromised. I've done this. I've done that. We've everything that's been asked of us, we've tried our damnedest. But you can only do that so many times. And then you can only watch so many times as the United States spends trillions of dollars because Wall Street was too big to fail. Because Detroit had 2 big automakers that were too big to fail. That we have foreign governments that completely crap the bed in their economics. So we go and loan them money, or we bail them out with money. But yet, you're the coal miner who's lost his job in Gillette, Wyoming. You are the rancher whose grazing allotments have been seriously restricted. You are the insert whatever here. You're the small businesses that depend on those rural activities. You're the restaurant. You're the gas station that your community is now shrunk to just about nothing because of global trade, because of social decisions, we as a society making decisions legally or politically about how we're going to use and manage our lands. Put yourself in those shoes, and then when some crazy guy comes, and he might have a really stupid idea called state transfer, but finally he's someone who sat down at the coffee shop and listened to you, odds are you're going to view him or her as maybe one of your last hopes. That, you know what? I'm not sure if the person can pull it off, but at least they listened to me. And some of these carnies, as I call them, they know there's a crisis out there. They know there's frustration out there. And so they make a point to go and act like they're listening. But really what they're doing is they're doing the bidding for people. And there are plenty of people in politics who want to capitalize on a crisis. And we've all heard the punchline at times that says, oh, never let a good crisis go to waste. And in large part, some of these fringe operators in the political world, that is almost the creed by which they live. So I know that's a long discussion, but I'm trying to give some perspective about where the fuel comes from for stupid ideas like state transfer. It doesn't just come out of the blue. Every time we make a decision on a scale of some of the things I mentioned and a lot of things I don't mention, we affect people's lives. And when we affect their lives and we don't give any consideration to how we've affected them, we think, oh, all right, we're going to change this and we're all just going to go back to our happy lives and hell with them. It's, survival of the fittest, that's capitalism. That's just, get on with it and get a life. Well, That's easy to say. It's not always easy to do. Some people can pull it off. Some people don't have the obligation. Some people have the skills and talents that are transferable or easily adapted to other industries. But not everybody's in that position. And that is the fuel that fills or burns the fires of dumb ideas as it relates to some of the things we're fighting on state transfer. And I'm convinced that if we don't start thinking in a bigger way, a wider mindset about how our land use decisions, how our trade policies are affecting these people, we better get ready to just fight stupid ideas like state transfer for the rest of our lives. Because there's always going to be fuel for the fire. And it might not next time, if you can beat state transfer and the dumb idea it represents, the next time it rears its ugly head because of the frustrations of people feeling left behind and left out, it might be some other manner or ideology that the carnies come along and say, yeah, these people are still frustrated. Nobody's listening to them. In fact, it's a worse plight here than it has been in a long time. Let's come up with even a dumber idea than state transfer. Oh, we got a bunch of funders who will pay us for some other stupid idea, and we can be their agents to carry out that policy. So I know that's kind of a long spiel, but I strongly feel that if we don't start as a society, at least pay, and let me restate that. We as a society have an obligation to those people who are affected by our decisions, whether they're rural people, whether they're resource industry people, whether they're small business owners. We have every bit of an obligation to consider them as we do the Wall Streeters, as we do the union auto worker, as we do the whoever else that this country supposedly has time, money, and interest in helping out and making accommodations for when things don't go well. And for these people, it's not necessarily things don't go well. It's just that we've made some decisions politically that we're going to have trade policies that export all of the environmental problems that we don't want here, and we export them to Canada and South America and Africa and everywhere else. And we feel good about it because, we don't see it in our backyard. But the same people who were in those industries here, who were trying to do it according to all of our environmental policies, no longer have a job. And their little communities and everything else are shrinking. So I'm sure that's got some people scratching their head, some on their keyboard sending me emails already. But I feel strongly about that state transfer and those dumb ideas are symptoms of something else. And you don't need to be Einstein to know that you don't treat the symptom. You treat the core cause, the disease, whatever you want to call it, that causes the symptom. So that's kind of my soapbox speech for today about why I think that some of the things we do need to be maybe rethought and reconsidered, because when it comes to land management, when it comes to how we as big small communities, but a big society are going to do this, the thinking that got us here is not the thinking that's going to solve the problem. I think Mark Twain said, the ideas that got you here are seldom the ideas that get you out of here. And I think that's very true when it comes to land management. And that ties to state transfer, which ties to what we as hunters love. We love our public lands. We love the opportunity to go and hunt and fish and camp and shoot and do all the things we love to do. And all the fringe politicians that are using this, what I'll call a crisis, this frustration for their own personal benefit, I have no use for any of them. And I don't care which side of the aisle they're from. I have zero use for any of them that want to go to these people who are frustrated and in a lot of instances are justifiably frustrated, probably less frustrated than they have the right to be frustrated. They should be more frustrated. And then you get politicians that come and want to skin them and take advantage of those frustrations. So anyhow, that's this whole political year going on here, and how we're trying to wrap up this last series. That last 20-minute, I guess, dissertation was the piece I'm trying to boil down in episode number 15 of the YouTube series about what's behind state transfer. I think that is what is behind state transfer. As far as who is behind state transfer, that's a pretty easy answer to give. There's groups based out of Utah called the American Lands Council. They are the ones who are promoting it with the greatest degree. There's a bunch of dark money groups that are funding it behind the scenes. If you go to DC, like I and a few other people who are advocates against state transfer, some of us get to go to DC, and you quickly see who's funneling money at this operation, and it's not friends of ours. These are people who, for years and years and decades, have promoted the idea of selling the public lands. And they have a lot of money. And with a lot of money comes a lot of political influence. Those are the people who are behind it. And this is, I'm going to say this here, and I know some people are going to come unwound because I'm a conservative person. Fiscally, I am probably as conservative as anybody that's listening. I'm a right of center, most people would say. But I try to be really open-minded. I try to be a person of ideas, not policies. A person of thought, rather than a person of, I guess. I'll go back to ideologies again. And all right, Randy, just say it. The frickin' Republican National Committee adopted a platform plank in Cleveland last month that advocates for the transfer of federal public lands, BLM lands, and Forest Service lands to the states. That's the biggest bunch of bullshit. That is an absolute cop-out. It's a grade school punk kind of idea that is so annoying. And they need to be called out for it. The same way we call out the left and the Democrats when they think. And I kind of equate state transfer to gun control, okay? Gun control is the dumbest idea I think I've ever heard, right up there with state transfer. Because everybody knows that gun control is nothing but a head fake. It is going to do nothing to change crime. Zero. In fact, I've never, I own, I don't know how many long guns, dozens and dozens, and I've got thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition in my house. And I have never seen one of them spontaneously get out of my vault, load themselves with that ammunition and go shoot somebody. Or even go fire spontaneously. So I think most of us listening agree how stupid of an idea gun control is. The mirror of that on the other side is state transfer. State transfer solves nothing. It's a feel-good, distract from the big tasks ahead. Gun control distracts from the big task of solving crime and poverty and some really complicated social issues. State transfer distracts from getting on with the hard work of proper federal land management. And unfortunately, we have political parties on both sides that want to run around and sell these stupid, false narratives that somehow those ideas are going to help us. And if we're going to bitch about the left and Democrats coming up with dumbass ideas about gun control, which we should say how stupid that is and how it does nothing, zero. We should also bitch and point out and hold accountable the same type of ignorant thinking on the other side. And we shouldn't fall for the false narrative that, well, these guys will protect our guns. You know what? You can be both. You can force somebody to think long and hard and give some effort and commit to solving crime and violence, and still say, you know what, we're going to do the same hard work on the other side to solve land management. So it's when we get to who's behind transfer, it's pretty obvious. Just like who's behind gun control and the dumb head fake that represents, it's pretty obvious. You guys don't need me to tell you that. And to think that somehow that's defensible, that the Republican platform comes out of Cleveland with that stupid plank in it, that now many of the Western state Republican platforms have the same stupid idea in it. If you are a hunter, a fisher, a hunter, an angler, someone who camps on public lands, someone who recreational shoots, because make no doubt that state trust lands heavily restrict and in some cases completely prohibit recreational shooting. If you somehow are going to defend that dumb idea as supposedly being okay because it came from a guy who says, oh, I won't let them take your guns. You know what? We can all fight to make sure no one takes our guns at the same time. We don't need dumbasses coming and distracting us and doing stupid things, passing party platform planks that say, oh, we want to get rid of the public lands. Or, oh, we want to give them to the states, which they say that because they're afraid of the political blowback that comes with saying dispose of the public lands. So they say transfer them to the states. That sounds a little more tolerable. But everybody who thinks about this, everybody who's studied it knows that that means get rid of the public lands. So don't bullshit me on that if you're a politician. I'm not, I have no use for it. And I hope that if you're listening, you don't have any use for it. So that gets to episode 15 about what's behind it and who's behind it. And then episode 16 of the YouTube series on state transfer, I'm still scripting that one out about what you can do. It all starts with you the person, you the individual. First of all, inform yourself, because if you aren't informed and you don't look at this objectively, regardless of your political affiliations, regardless of your biases, you have to look at it and analyze it for what it is. If you don't do that, then the odds of you being able to help others or advocate for this cause, for the public lands, is going to be restricted. And then it gets to your family and friends. Educate them, teach them, at least if nothing else, make them aware that the whole idea is not what it sounds like on the surface. Make them aware that the end goal really is the 50-year-old effort to dispose of the public lands. It's just packaged in a different package. Those are things you can do. The other thing you can do is there's some groups that have been speaking out against public land transfer. And alphabetically, I think it would be Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. It would be the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. It'd be the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. It would be Trout Unlimited. And there's probably some more. I'm sorry that I forgot them. But if you know of a group that's speaking out for your behalf by trying to stop the stupidity of what's called public land transfer or disposal of public land, give them your support, whether it's your financial support or just an email of, hey, attaboy, thanks. Appreciate you looking out for me. And you don't have to agree with them on every position they have, but they're taking a lot of political risk by stepping out and standing up against the stupidity that is state transfer. So your support to those groups helps. And then there's a lot of groups that have been silent. A lot of groups that claim to represent us as hunters are just hoping that they can dodge the bullet. They hope that somehow, someday, some reporter does not come and knock on their door and say, I would like to ask you where you stand on the idea of disposal of the public lands. because then they're going to be in a tight spot because they've been silent. And some of them have not just been silent, but they've been supporting in heavy doses the dumbasses who came up with the idea of selling or transferring our public lands. So those groups, one thing you can do, ask them, where are you at on this? What's, why haven't I heard from you? You with me or against me here? That would be a huge help. The other thing you can do is, and I know this, I say this on the podcast a lot because I get asked the question so much, is what can I do? I'm just one person. What can I do? Tell me. Well, whether it's your county commission or whether it's your state legislator, or someone in your congressional district who goes to DC, a senator, a representative, or you're someone who's an influential person in your community, make sure people understand that this is a bad idea. Explain to them, educate yourself so you can interact. And if you got a group of 4 or 8 or 10 hunting friends who agree and feel the same way, get together and go down to their local office. Ask them to come to one of your meetings. Whatever it is, engage with these people. Because I read a comment the other day by a person who said, you know what, I emailed my person, and I think they were from Iowa, my congressman, and the congressman said, you know what, no one has ever even mentioned this to me before. So there might be a lot of people who, because there's not a lot of federal land in their state, it's not an issue, quote unquote, high on their radar screen. But they're going to be asked sooner or later to vote on it, one way or the other. And you could probably influence them more than anyone else. So don't give up on anybody. Do not allow there to be a path of least resistance, because politics is like water. It follows the path of least resistance. And our job as advocates for public land, advocates for hunting, advocates for the future, our job is to make sure there is no path of least resistance. It's that simple. If we just say, well, damn, I can't, I'm busy today, or, it's not going to make a difference, or blah, 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 whatever insert, reason or excuse here, guess what? We're going to get what we deserve. It's that simple. If we don't show up and we don't push back the same way that we push back on other dumb ideas that we oppose, like gun control, then we're going to get what we got coming to us. And we'll have no one to blame but ourselves when these lands are either sold or transferred to states, and then will eventually be sold because the states can't afford them. So that's just a few of the items I have for episode number 16 that's coming to the YouTube channel about what you can do. We can all do something. So anyhow, holy cow, I'm rambling and carrying on here. I feel like I've only been on the mic for about, 20 minutes. And now I look and see, holy cow, I've been on here for an hour and a half. So you people are probably all asleep by now. If you're not, hang around for another 10 minutes. I'm sure I can get the job done to get you sleeping in no time. But that's... I didn't mean for the public land transfer thing to take as much of this podcast, but it's a bunch of topics that have been brought up on our website, on our Facebook pages, a lot of emails to me on the topic. These videos we've done have really, I think, engaged a lot of people who are like, what can I do? What can I do? So I'm trying to give people an idea. Here's what you can do. And first of all, it starts with informing yourself and learning. And doing your own research. Don't necessarily take Randy Newberg as the gospel. Everybody's going to look at it from their own perspective, their own life experiences, and your life experiences are different than mine. So come to your own conclusions from your own way of looking at it. But all right, what do we got left? Marital advice. I don't want to do any of that. My wife has been listening to the last few podcasts, and if I get too drawn into that, man. I'm walking on thin ice. I've been married 27 years and whew, wow. How? I don't know. If you looked at this calendar here on the whiteboard, let's see. How many days am I home from when I leave? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I'm home 25 days between October or mid-August and mid-December. Ooh, man, I hope my wife has a good boyfriend. I can't believe I just said that. Actually, we joke. I always tell her, look, if I get done on a trip early, I'll call you a day or two in advance. I'm not going to come home and surprise you. There's an old Merle Haggard song. If you've never heard it, it's, what's it called? The Old Man from the Mountains Coming Home. And he says, when he gets there, you better be home alone. And we always joke when we hear that song on the radio. And now my wife looks at me and she's really good at playing the part. She'll give me the look like, how do you know I'm just joking? Anyhow, so if I'm on the road and you send emails, Facebook posts, whatever, and they don't get replied to, bear with me. I'll try to get to them, but the person who runs this operation when I'm on the road answers and sorts all my emails, prioritizes what needs to be taken care of, what she can take care of, moderates the Hunt Talk forum. So if you guys get out of hand, if you get out of hand, she's got a very, very, what would I say, quick trigger when it comes to moderating the forum. She doesn't put up with any cussing, any bigotry, anything like that. So I'm a little more just, boys will be boys sort of thing, if that's the way to put it, when I moderate the forum, but not her. So behave yourself when I'm on the road. But it's always fun this time of year because you never know what the season holds in store. And I touched on this a little bit in the last podcast with Giannis Putelis, and it was about this point in life where you get a little reflective about, gee, am I going to get to come back here ever again? And I still remember lifting off the water in Alaska last May. And if you follow our show, our podcast, TV show, you'll know how much I love bear hunting in Southeast Alaska. But you start thinking, gosh, am I going to get back here? And so now I'm looking at the board to hear the whiteboard of all the hunts we have. And it's like, man, I wonder how many times I'm going to get to archery elk hunt in New Mexico. I wonder how many times I'm going to get to chase mule deer in Nevada. So it does motivate me to milk it for everything I possibly can. And somebody asked me this, and it kind of caught me off guard. And I'm really thinking about it, and I'm like, I didn't have the answer, but they're like, why do you always kill something on the last day? And I don't always kill something on the last day. On TV, it looks like it because we close the episode after we kill something usually, so it looks like the last day. But I got to thinking about it, and I was trying to figure out if it was a purposeful thing or a subconscious thing. And I think it's a combination of two things. When we're first out there, I'm really enjoying the challenge of trying to solve the riddle, figure out what the elk or deer are doing. I'm kind of just absorbing the new location, the new place, a little bit have that tourist look about me. And then, so I think it's that I'm really enjoying and thinking about just what this place represents, what this hunt represents. But then the other part of it probably is that just from a strategy standpoint, I'm a more aggressive hunter the longer into the hunt I go. I'll kind of pussyfoot around the first couple days because, all right, I found some elk or I found some deer and I don't want to bump them out. I'll just kind of skirt around the edges and wait for my opportunity. Day 3, day 4, day 5, it's like, you know what, Randy? You only have so many days, so get with it. And by the last day, I'm almost like some crazy man. I'm so aggressive the last day. And maybe I guess some of you would probably say, well, get more aggressive the first day, Newberg, you knothead. But I don't think I ever will, because I want the full experience. I would rather hunt 5 days and know that because of how I approach it, there's a chance I might not fill all those tags, than to go there, head down, just get after it, shoot, move on to the next hunt, shoot, move on to the next hunt. I'm not saying I could necessarily do that on the first day every day, but point being, there's a lot of value, a lot of pleasure, a lot of satisfaction that comes from just approaching it as a learning experience, approaching it as something fun, approaching it as something challenging, and just riding the wave, as they say. So anyhow, I'm going to have to let all of you go. As I'm sitting here scrolling through these questions out on the Hunt Talk forum, I could go on and on and on and on, because I don't know how many posts. We're up to post number out there on just that thread that talks about topics for the podcast. We are at, gosh, how many posts? 208 posts. So you don't want me to sit here and try and answer 208 questions, but if you go out to hunttalk.com and leave your question there, I'll try to get to it sometime along the way. And we're going to try bang out some more podcasts before we hit the road here in a few weeks. And then once we hit the road, they're going to be more likely to be every other week. Last week we missed it because I had some guests and I thought we were going to be able to do it, but I was at national board meetings, doing volunteer work, and it just, schedules didn't match up. So my apologies there. But I think some of the ones we're going to do while we're out in the field, I think you'll get a kick out of it, because they're going to be a bit more of a just discussing what has been happening on that hunt, what we should have done different, how stupid we are. You're going to get to know my camera guys a little better. You're going to get to know the guest hunters a little bit. And it's the audio is probably going to have some wind noise. It's probably going to have some tent slapping in the wind. It's, who knows what it's going to have, but it's going to be live. Well, not live, but it's going to be in the field, and that's just how we're going to do it. So, and our ability to upload them is only as good as our ability to get to a hotel for a shower that also has Wi-Fi. So, but anyhow, I really appreciate all of you listening. The podcast is just doing great. And it's a thanks to all of you who listen to this. If you ever are so inclined, if you'd share these podcasts or tell your friends about it, that really helps us a lot. Same with our YouTube channel. That YouTube channel is going like crazy. It's just something I wish we would have started a year ago. It's something we're definitely going to keep doing. We're on Sportsman's Channel right now, Sunday nights, 9:00 Mountain Time. You can catch us on Sportsman's Channel, and we're in the middle of trying to get our 2017 agreement wrapped up with Sportsman's Channel. So all good luck on our side. Hopefully you'll be able to watch us next year on Sportsman's Channel. And then, I've told you about the Hunt Talk forum, but we've also got Instagram, we've got Facebook, we've got all kinds of stuff going on, and it's mostly under the title, the name Randy Newberg Hunter. Certainly the Facebook and the YouTube is there, and Instagram is under Randy Newberg Hunter. So I don't know what more I could ask of all of you. You guys, man, the support we get is so great, and I don't know how many emails my wife sorts for me in a week, but she sorts them by high priority, low priority, sorts them by positive comments, better address this guy, he seems to have a concern. It's very, very seldom that I have to address an email where someone is mad at us. Let me restate that. It's very seldom that a listener or a viewer sends us an email that's mad at us. If it's a politician, a policymaker, or someone who's kind of against us in the hunting, fishing, and public access world, I get plenty of those, but those don't count. So anyhow, folks, thanks so much for listening. Really appreciate all the support that you give us, and hope you all have a great week. Thank you.